Target has everything you need for Easter fun on your next Target run, like basket building and brunching faves, decor, and candy galore. It's festive fun for everyone. Easter, easy as Target. Looking for a way to reach your financial goals faster? With Fidelity Spire, you can set savings goals, start investing, and more, all with one free app. Get started at fidelity.com/spire. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. The Fidelity Spire app is free to download. Accounts made available via the app may be subject to fees. Fidelity Brokerage Services member NYSE SIPC.
In the time it takes you to listen to this ad, almost 3 million gallons of water will have flowed over the deck at Niagara Falls. And when that deck needs to be protected from all that water, it's sealed with America's recognized brand in water protection, Thompson's Water Seal. Oh, look. Another 100,000 gallons. Weather protected, water sealed. Thompson's Water Seal. Trust the seal. Available at a retailer near you.
Live from wherever you happen to be, it's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. And now, here's your host, curator of the Hall, Jamie Dew.
And we're coming in for a landing. Oh, it's soft. It's a soft, beautiful landing. Pillow-esque, you might say. Hey, I'm Jamie. Welcome back to the SNL Hall of Fame, where each week I sit down with a guest and they add a Saturday Night Live cast member, host, musical guest, or writer to the ballot of the SNL Hall of Fame. And then voting will open on April 25th, and we will find out who gets enshrined into the SNL Hall of Fame. So there's that. Before I invite you in, as always, would you please wipe your feet? This is very hallowed ground. And, it's sort of muddy outside. I'm looking out my window right now, and it is. It's a Canadian March day, which means it's sort of muddy and slushy on the ground. People are out wearing shorts because it's, above zero. And if you survive January and February in, the Canadian winter, then, March is where all bets are off. A day that's 5 degrees, you're going to celebrate that and maybe even visit a patio. So there's that. Hey, this week, I shuffled things up a little bit. We were normally scheduled to hear from, I don't want to get into who. We've shuffled it up because I don't want to give away who we're going to add to the ballot next week. But these 2 weeks have been shuffled. And rather than a writer this week, we're going to add a cast member. And the reason I decided to make this alteration to the schedule is because of my guest. And my guest today is Mike Wilner. You can find him on Twitter at Wilnerness. You can also find his work in the Toronto Star or the star.ca on your web browsing apparatus. And he is a baseball columnist, and he used to be the voice of the Blue Jays. For me, growing up, Bob McCowan, a legend in this town, used to do a show called Jays Talk after every Jays game. Sometime in my early 20s, Mike took that over and basically ran with it for the next, I bet you 20 years. And he also was on the games with the play-by-play and the color announcer, and he often called innings. And then the last couple of years, he actually was the full-time radio play-by-play announcer for the Toronto Blue Jays. So with baseball coming back and baseball being a huge has left a huge impression on this podcast in terms of the rules and regulations of the Hall of Fame. We borrow quite heavily from the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I'm a baseball guy. I like baseball. And I thought it would be great to play the interview that I did with Mike, where he nominated cast member Eddie Murphy to the SNL ballot. And, this guy is a virtuoso. I'm talking about Eddie Murphy. Mike Wilner is great as well, but he's not a 19-year-old virtuoso. And that's what we're going to get to here today. And I'm looking forward to playing it for you. So let's get right to that interview and play ball. This is Mike Wilner with Eddie Murphy being added to the SNL Hall of Fame ballot.
When I listen to my next guest speak, I am whisked to the Sky Dome with an ice-cold beer in my hand. It's because I immediately think of the Toronto Blue Jays. As a columnist podcaster for the Toronto Star, Mike Wilner is no stranger to the machinations of the Baseball Hall of Fame. But today, he joins me to talk Saturday Night Live and to nominate Eddie Murphy onto the SNL Hall of Fame ballot. Mike, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. This is a very cool idea that you have, and I'm thrilled to participate.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. So that makes two of us that are thrilled. So before we get into your nominee, I think that it might be important to take a trip down memory lane and learn a little bit about your experience with the show. Talk to me, Mike, about your journey with Saturday Night Live.
Nothing more than just a viewer, but when I was a teenager, I was staying up late enough to watch. It's funny because I didn't really watch much of it live in the Eddie Murphy era. I remember when Lorne Michaels came back and the new cast came on, with Billy Crystal and Christopher Guest and that Martin Short, that all-star year. That I think I probably started watching the year before, when there was still
that was actually
Louis Dreyfus and Mary
that was actually Dick Ebersol as well.
Was it
the All-Star year? That was his attempt at like going George Steinbrenner, if you will. On
right. And then Lorne came back afterwards, and he pulled John Lovitz out of the fire a couple of years later.
That's right. Yes,
when he fired the Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr. cast. Right.
Exactly. That was his version.
Okay.
Back.
So I remember the All-Star year, and I remember the Tim Kazurinsky and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Brad Hall years where Eddie was there. But other than that, it's just been as someone who's been a fan of the show, and I did go once to see it, which was fantastic in 1995. And but other than I have no special connection other than someone who's a big fan of comedy and pop culture, and Saturday Night Live is a big part of that.
Yeah, it's funny. Most of the people that we have on, that is the special connection, that it was a show they watched in their teenage years, and it just was so important. It was, it informed their sense of humor to a certain degree. It was water cooler talk on Monday morning at school, and I'm certain that Eddie Murphy's name must have come up a few times in some of those conversations when you think about those years that he was on.
He was a force of nature, absolutely.
Right. I mean, even down to the opening credits, when you hear Don Pardo go through the cast list at the beginning, when he mentioned Eddie Murphy, there was an audible increase in the amount of applause, you could notice. There was a thunderous roar from the crowd. And these were talented casts. I mean, everybody, the parallel between baseball to me and And Saturday Night Live is everybody who's ever stood on that stage is doing something extraordinary. And, I'm envious of them and I look up to them all. But there are certain people that just transcend that, and they're the all-stars. And then there are people that transcend those, and they're the Hall of Famers.
Right.
And Eddie Murphy, there is something very, very special about him. He was 19 years old when he started on the show, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there was something very special about him. The fact that he was 19 was unbelievably impressive, that he had this well-rounded, worldly sense of humor, and his ability as a mimic was incredible. But everything, it feels like, and obviously I'm sure he had a dud or two, but everything he did was hilarious. These characters that he created were incredible and long-lasting. And he was funny as hell. And and he really, you're right that everyone there, everyone who's ever been on that stage is really good. But he was a member of some of the weakest casts in the history of the show. And he shone. And I don't think it was because of the fact that he was surrounded by, to use the baseball comparison, a lot of quadruple A players.
Right.
But he was that good. He would have been a star in any era in that show. And I totally get why the audience reacted to the introduction the way it did. He was the Beatles of that cast.
Wow. The Beatles. This is going to make the next question seem really stupid, but I have to ask it. And that's if you could take me through your process of selecting Eddie Murphy as your nominee.
For me, it's as slam dunk as it gets. I don't believe that there even is Saturday Night Live right now without Eddie Murphy. So if you're putting a Hall of Fame together, just the very, we're not putting together a Hall of Fame for a show that lasted 5.5 seasons, even though those first 4 or 5 were pretty incredible. Saturday Night Live doesn't survive beyond 1981 or 2 if Eddie Murphy's not added, and that reason alone, I think, gets him in. But also just the body of work, the stuff he did. Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood and Gumby and James Brown and the Jailhouse Poet and the Stevie Wonder stuff. And that's just off the top of my head, having not watched it for his stuff, obviously, for decades. I'm not sure there's a more slam dunk candidate for this Hall of Fame than Eddie Murphy.
Wow. First ballot Hall of Famer, if you will.
Unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer.
For heaven's sake, he had a character that was so popular, they killed Buckwheat off.
That's right.
They did a whole episode, essentially.
That was their sort of reaction to the way the Reagan assassination attempt was covered, and the fact that everybody showed the Reagan getting shot at every angle a million times over, and every guest they brought on, hey, have you seen it yet? Let's show you. And Piscopo did a terrific job doing Ted Koppel over the course of that, and then we find out later that Buckwheat faked his death, and that's a character that I didn't even bring up, and I'm not sure that character would stand up these days in our current culture, but it was a wonderful parody of the character from the Little Rascals show. But yeah, that Buckwheat's shot episode, I remember that one very, very well.
Right? Okay, switching gears here for a second. I want to talk about the beginning, and I want to talk about the fact that Eddie started as a featured player. Now, today, that is the norm. You start as a featured player, or sometimes as a writer, and then after a couple of years, you're potentially able to join the repertory players. But in 1980, Gene Domanian was building, a repertory cast out of whole cloth, and could have easily inserted Eddie Murphy into that category had she chosen to. Instead, Eddie was brought on as a featured player. Somebody this good, was getting his service time manipulated, if you will. And I don't quite understand what it was that they were thinking.
I think there are two explanations for it. The first one is that he was 19. And the second one probably is that he was African American. And they wanted to make him have to earn his way in, even though, there have been some good featured players. And I sort of understand, hey, let's see what this guy has, but how could you not see what this guy has, right?
Right.
And maybe that's why he couldn't save Gene Tamanian, because what kind of talent scout can you be if you don't see what you have in Eddie Murphy the second you see Eddie Murphy get on the stage?
Good point. And the way I understand it is he almost wasn't selected. There were other comedians that they had ahead of him initially, and it was Neil Levy that ended up, saving him by getting him in for another audition. And, the rest is history.
And it comes down to, again, right? There was already an African American cast member, and it's amazing that even today, like this was over 40 years ago,
right?
But even today, you look at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a wonderful show with 2 Hispanic female cast members, and when you hear both of them talk, Melissa Fumero and Stephanie Beatriz, they talked about when they auditioned. They talked ahead of time. One of them was going to have straight hair. One of them was going to have curly hair, just to not give anybody another reason to say, oh, we already have one, because that's how casting people still think these days. And it's insane to me that, you can only have one diverse person. You can only have one Latin character. You can only have one black character. It's crazy, but it was a million times worse in 1980. And so, that was how the business was, and it's ridiculous and it's stupid, and it almost cost them their show.
Wow. When you put it that way, right? I mean, no Eddie Murphy. Your thesis here is no Eddie Murphy, no SNL. And that's fascinating. Well, switching gears again from his time, performing on the stage as a cast member, to taking a look at his hosting credentials. I mean, the only reason I am going to allow hosting credentials really to be discussed in this case is because this is a guy that hosted the show while he was a cast member.
Which is reason enough, by the way, to put him in the Hall of Fame.
Right?
They had a host cancel or something, and they decided that Eddie was such a big star that he would host while he was a cast member.
It's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. He hosted with Lionel Richie was the musical guest, and it was in 1982. So that was, just bananas that he did that, and a lot of fun. But he also hosted the year after he left.
And I remember the monologue from that. I remember he talked about when he came on that they asked him once he left the cast if he would come back and host after 48 Hours came out. And he said, forget it. I'm a big star. 48 Hours is a huge hit movie. I don't need you. And then the next movie he made was called Best Defense, and it was a movie with Dudley Moore, and it sucked. And Eddie talked about how much it sucked. And so he said to them, yeah, I'll come back and host. And then in the interim, Beverly Hills Cop came out and was a huge smash. So, that was, 84, maybe 85. Yeah. It is crazy that I remember it that well. 37 years later, I remember him coming out on the stage and talking about Best Defense, and he said, and that was a movie that sucked.
That's right. But he got paid. He said, if you got paid what I got paid, you would have done it too.
Exactly.
The other really memorable moment from that is obviously they brought Buckwheat back, but the White Like Me sketch. I don't know if you remember that one.
Of course.
Yeah, just fantastic. What a great idea. And they did it as a pre-tape. Just delivered on all cylinders. What a great, great idea.
You know, a lot of people talk about racial prejudice, and some people have gone so far as to say that there are actually two Americas, one black and one white. But talk is cheap. So I decided to look into the problem myself, firsthand, to go underground and actually experience America as a white man. I hired the best makeup people in the business. If I was going to pass as a white man, everything had to be perfect.
I think that's a little light. Okay, let's try this.
This, look kind of Harry Reams-ish.
I like it.
I studied for my role very carefully. I watched lots of Dynasty. See how they walk? Their butts are real tight when they walk. They gotta keep their butts tight. I gotta remember to keep my butt real tight when I walk. And I read a whole bunch of Hallmark cards.
My lovely wife. You always mean lots more to me than you could ever guess, for you have done so much to fill my life with happiness.
Finally, I was ready.
What are you doing?
I'm buying this newspaper.
That's all right. There's nobody around. Go ahead, take it. Take it. Go ahead. Take it. Yeah, take it. Take it.
Slowly, I began to realize that when white people are alone, they give things to each other for free. There was only one other black man on the bus. He got off on 45th Street. The problem was much more serious than I'd ever imagined.
Now, let me get this straight, Mr. White. You'd like to borrow $50,000 from our bank, but you have no collateral. You have no credit. You don't even have any ID. Is that correct?
That's right.
Mr. White, I'm sorry. This is not a charity. This is a business.
Harry, why don't you take your break now? I'll take care of Mr. White.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Bob.
That was a close one, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
We don't have to bother with these formalities, do we, Mr. White, huh?
What a silly Negro.
Just take what you want, Mr. White. Pay us back any time, or don't. We don't care.
Tell me, do you know of any other banks like this in this area?
So what did I learn from all of this? Well, I learned that we still have a very long way to go in this country before all men are truly equal. But I'll tell you something. I got a lot of friends, and we've got a lot of makeup. So the next time you're hugging up with some really super groovy white guy, or you met a really great, super keen white chick, don't be too sure. They might be black.
It was definitely very on point for its time, and a phenomenal satire, and a really good sketch for sure.
Let's talk about Eddie's highly anticipated return to 8H in December of 2019. Mike, I thought it really delivered the goods. What did you think?
And I remember watching the monologue, and I remember thinking how cool it was that he's back, and that he made that appearance on the show after the years and years and years and years of being away. I think he came to the 40th, and people weren't sure that he was going to, and weren't necessarily expecting him to, and he didn't do much. I remember being disappointed by him on the 40th, but really happy that when he came back to host, he brought back Mr. Robinson. I remember that, and he did. You know, I was worried that he wasn't going to, that he was, one of those, that stuff's in the past, I don't do that anymore. But I remember enjoying that a lot.
When you think of wandering into the SNL Hall of Fame and you see Eddie's plaque on the wall and there's a video monitor beneath it playing a sketch, what is the sketch that plays that, is the definitive Eddie Murphy sketch?
That is, I mean, there could be so many.
Right.
James Brown Celebrity Hot Tub certainly stands out as one that could be there.
Sure does.
Tyrone Green, Images by Tyrone Green, could be up there. I don't remember a whole bunch of the Gumby stuff, other than the tagline, "I'm Gumby, damn it." So I don't know if I would include that. There's Mr. Robinson's.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess we settle for a montage. I guess that's the best we can do here. There's just too many. What else can you say about Eddie Murphy in building a case for his nomination?
I mean, I really think it just honestly goes back to the first thing I said. Without him, there's no show. And it's not to disparage anyone before or since. Saturday Night Live was an incredible thing from when it started in 1975, but then the original cast all left. Lorne Michaels left after 5 years, and Eddie Murphy joined a cast that, it had Gilbert Gottfried on it, which is really cool when you look back, but it also had Charles Rocket, Denny Dillon, and Christine Ebersol, and Ann Risley, and Gail Mathias, and this was a show that had Eddie Murphy not joined, I really honestly believe it would have been canceled within a year or two. Would have been done. It wasn't very good. It wasn't nearly as good as the Not Ready for Primetime Players, the original cast. And without Eddie, it's over. It really is. And I remember seeing just recently, I don't remember why I saw it recently, but the episode that Bill Murray hosted, I think it was that year, 80, 81, maybe 81, 82, where they were talking about all the headlines, Saturday Night Live, or Saturday Night Dead, and all that stuff, which has since been regurgitated many times, but it was legit back then. And I think for more than anyone else in the history of the show, Eddie Murphy saved Saturday Night Live, and it's not a continuous thing without him.
Well, that's pretty definitive, Mike. I mean, I don't know what else to add on to that, really.
Yeah, anybody who doesn't vote for Eddie Murphy in the Saturday Night Live Hall of Fame should have their voting privileges revoked immediately.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I got to tell you, Mike, it's been a blast sitting with you today talking about Eddie Murphy and why he should be in the SNL Hall of Fame. He has officially now been nominated to the ballot, and we'll see how this all plays out. If people are looking for more information on you, where should they turn, Mr. Wilner?
Well, thank you for the promotion opportunity. I have a podcast. It's called Deep Left Field. It comes out every Thursday, and we talk about all the wonderful Blue Jay and baseball things with fabulous guests and great stories. And you can also read me in the Toronto Star, at thestar.com, in your app, all that stuff, wherever you get your newspaper. So please subscribe to the podcast and subscribe to the paper, and that way you can read and listen to some pretty terrific Blue Jays coverage, continuing what I hope was the standard that I set after 25 years on the radio. So follow me around and read and listen to my stuff. And thank you for this. This is a really cool idea that you've got, and I'm very happy to be a part of it.
That's it for another week of the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. My goodness gracious. If Eddie Murphy isn't a slam dunk, I don't know who is. I really don't know who is. Now, it's going to come down to voting, obviously. April 25th, voting will open, and we're getting close to April 25th at this point, folks. So there will be 30 names on the ballot at that point, and you'll have 10 votes. Up to 10 votes. You can only use 5 of them if you want. That's your choice. You can use as many as you want, up to 10. And if a Hall of Fame balloteer hits 66.6% of the votes received on all the ballots, well, then they will be in the Hall of Fame. Really want to thank Mike for joining me today. That was fantastic. And if you want to find out more of his stuff, again, visit thestar.ca or Wilnerness. But that's all I've got for you this week. But if you would, could you do me a favor? And on your way past, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. You can find everything you need to know about the show at snlhof.com. Don't forget to subscribe, share, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. This is Doug Denant saying, this is Doug Denant saying, see you next month in the hall.
Podcasts and such.